Hello everyone. I've just been to the gym and I got straight home and I really want to do a tutorial on this topic because a few of you have had the same issues come up with your check-ins so far for this week. So I think it's important just to cover it in a tutorial. And for those of you that have not yet had any of these issues come up, I'm sure that you will at some point. And I personally think the more that you know about your body and how your body works, the better. So take note of all of this stuff because this is really interesting stuff. It's something that I really do think all of you need to understand moving forward in life in general. So important topic about stress today. So there are two main systems that your body operates under when it comes to your nervous system. So there's the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is known as fight or flight, and the parasympathetic nervous system is your rest and digest system. Parasympathetic nervous system is where we want our bodies to be operating from most of the time. This is like relaxed state. You can digest your food properly. You have really restful sleep. There's no immediate threats. It's just kind of more relaxed sort of state of being. And then you've got your sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight, which is triggered by stress. And the stress that triggers this system can be perceived or it can be a real threat, a physical threat. So a perceived threat is something like even just negative self-talk is a perceived threat. Worrying about things that are anticipated, like work issues, work stress, mental stress and pressure, physical stress, being in a calorie deficit, obviously working out and strenuous workouts, working out fasted on an empty stomach and then not fueling your body appropriately after can trigger this sort of nervous system response. And being ill, obviously, unwell can trigger the sympathetic nervous system. You have to think of it from our ancestors' kind of point of view. It would be the nervous system where if you're kind of always on high alert, there's a potential threat, there's maybe a famine, or there's going to be a tiger jumping out from the bush. It's that system that gets you ready to fight. So there's going to be a potential conflict and you need to have your body ready and primed to attack. So your adrenaline pumps, your heart rate increases, your mind is on high alert. And this, in practical sense, for our time of life in our generation, can be that overly anxious, overly stimulated, wired feeling where you're kind of just always on, you're always on edge. Someone might sneak up behind you and you jolt, like you're really panicked and your heart races because you're ready to fight. So you kind of have to consider it in an ancestry, primal point of view to really understand it put in today's modern world. So if you think of it, being in a calorie deficit, and I say this so many times, is a stressor on the body, and a prolonged calorie deficit can mean our sympathetic nervous system is triggered more often. So we can be more conditioned to go down that sympathetic fight or flight route, being in a prolonged calorie deficit. This is more seen as the deficit goes on, not so much 4 to 6 weeks. It will be more like 6+ weeks. You'll start to see more symptoms of this coming out. So what that means is that firstly, we don't want a calorie deficit to go on forever. We want to get out of our calorie deficit. We want to have an end date for our calorie deficit, and we want our bodies to rest and recover. It can be really worrying when this system kind of kicks in and it becomes our new normal. We're on edge and we're kind of always anxious and wired, but it's the new normal. We don't want that, and that can happen. And it can be really hard to switch it off. It can be hard to go from this state of being to a more parasympathetic, relaxed state of being. You should notice a difference. Sometimes you're not aware that you're in it until you actively try to calm yourself down. And it might be really hard to calm yourself down and relax because your body's like, we can't relax. We're in high alert. There might be a threat. We might die. There's a famine. Your body is on such high alert that you can't actually relax. And I've been here before, so that's why I can speak of it. And I do notice when I get into a fat loss, after a while, this system can definitely be triggered. So yeah, it's that wired feeling. Your sleep can be impacted, not restful sleep. You can wake up feeling tired the next morning, find it hard getting to sleep. You can wake up numerous times throughout the night. Less deep sleep because your body doesn't want to go into deep sleep, because then what if what if there's a threat overnight while you're sleeping? You need to be primed for it. It all does make sense, but I want you to keep it in mind and be aware of it, especially for those of you that are in a fat loss. So being in a fat loss and then adding in extra cardio or adding in HIIT workouts, adding in fasted cardio, all of this kind of stuff with the calorie deficit especially can really make this whole thing really bad. So that's why I try to encourage most of you to eat something before you work out. I know that most of you, hopefully, I don't think any of you actually are doing any form of high intensity interval training that I know of. If you are, definitely try to eat before. But definitely try to fuel your bodies appropriately, especially around your workouts, because this is where you're more likely to trigger this system. So make sure you're fueled adequately. For example, when I'm in a fat loss, I will eat before I go and train, and I will eat within the hour after I train, just so my body is like well fueled, especially around that higher output part of my day. Walking is good to counter don't know what the word is for it, to slow it down, to kind of try to actively get you out of the sympathetic nervous system. So walking's more relaxing. So taking the time to go for a relaxing walk, taking 15 to 20 minute breaks throughout the day to slow your body down, do some deep breathing, relax. And deep breathing sounds stupid and it sounds kind of hokey to a lot of people, but it works. Especially if you can put your hands on your diaphragm and actively try and get the breath lower into your belly and actively get those breaths nice and deep. You cannot be stressed and wound up when you have got the slow breathing happening. That's trying to tell your body to slow down, to calm down. There is no threat. If you've got shallow breathing, it's because you're kind of like, you're on edge and you're kind of hyped. You need to get that breath slower and deeper. Try to get that happening. Try to slow that down for 5+ minutes a day. Do some reading. I've been reading a lot lately. It literally helps calm me down. Do whatever you need to do. Go for walks away from your desk for 5 to 10 minutes at least at various intervals throughout your day. Do what you can to relax yourself. If you're in a calorie deficit, this is going to be even more important. And it's going to be even more important as the deficit goes on. But more so, I just want you to be super aware of it. And this is also another reason why I want you guys to continue doing your check-ins with me, please, and hitting all of those points with the questions that I ask you. Energy, mood, sleep. Do I ask you about sleep? I don't even remember. I don't think I asked you guys about sleep. I should probably ask you guys about sleep. Energy, mood, how your workouts have been, all of that stuff, because it helps me assess your biofeedback and it helps me assess how stressed you are, how your body's responding to the calories, and we can make adjustments as we go. Mood and energy are things that definitely can be impacted as the calorie deficit goes on. But I just want you to be super aware of the sympathetic versus the parasympathetic nervous systems. Your digestion obviously is another one that can start to go sideways when we're in that stress state. That stress state can increase cortisol production, which is the stress hormone. This is all very normal stuff. Like your cortisol will increase and decrease and fluctuate throughout the day. It's nothing to be worried about. But when you're in a chronic stress state, when the sympathetic nervous system's taking over most of the time, the cortisol production can become a bit more excessive, and this can lead to inflammation, which can lead to water retention or fluid retention. And that can look like weight resistance on the scale. It looks like you're not getting anywhere with your weight. But it can often be just holding on to water. And sometimes I do think that this is where we see the whoosh effect happen. Our bodies get stressed because we're in a calorie deficit. You have to remember, a calorie deficit is literally just giving your body less energy than it requires to function in a day. It's stressful for the body. So that stress does cause inflammation. It can cause water retention. And then eventually at some point your body might relax and whoosh, lets out that extra fluid it's been holding onto. I've seen it happen with myself and others. So it's not actually, the research isn't conclusive as to why this happens, but this is just what I think and why I think it happens. But long term, if you're going to stay in this stress state, then you just need to be aware that this can happen. The other thing is just to remember that there has to be a deadline and an end date on the calorie deficit for this reason. We don't want to stay in a stress state for months and months and months on end. Your body will adapt to that and you will get super used to being at that level of stress. Anxiety, mood, all sorts of stuff can start to go off. Your hormones can start to go off. PMS becomes really exacerbated. So that's why I always try to set a deadline on the end date. And a lot of you have come up towards maintenance at some point since you've been working with me. And a lot of you find it difficult going from fat loss to maintenance. Some of you love it, but some of you find that difficult. But you have to remember the why as to why you're doing it and why it's important. And I think this all helps you better understand why, because your body needs a break. It's stressed in a calorie deficit. Let's give it a break to relax, to calm down that nervous system, put you more into a parasympathetic state and just chill for a bit, let everything come back down normal, and then we can do the fat loss again further down the track. It's always there. Remove the deadlines, remove the stress of it. Don't make it more stressful than it has to be. So yeah, I hope that explains it. If you need any more clarification on this topic, you know how to find me. Okay, thank you.